Hello, I'm Jamie, and today we're going to be colouring a Mars and its 2 moons and Curiosity rover as well. If you don't already have this sheet to colour in, you'll find a link down in the description where you can download this from. There's a Dropbox link, and also you'll find on there a colouring sheet of Jupiter as well, which you can also do. And there's also another video, if you look on my channel, of colouring Jupiter and its 4 moons. So you can do those as well. I'm slowly working my way through the solar system. I kind of started in the middle, which is probably a bit weird, but it's fine. But yeah, I'm slowly working through the solar system with these different colouring sheets. So if you want to print this sheet off and follow along at home, feel free. If you want to colour it on your own, also feel free to just do that. If you're wondering what colours I'll be using, these here on the left is what I'm going to be using. If you want to add in some other ones, feel free as well. So let's start with an orange, I think, since Mars is the red planet. And it's kind of got this orangish glow to it. I'm going to leave this top section white because that's ice. So yeah, it should be white. And I'm going to start colouring in this part. Let's make my brush a little bit bigger. There we go. So if you don't know, Mars is red/orange. Because Mars has lots of iron on it, like the metal, and basically as you might know, when iron comes in contact with oxygen, it changes and becomes iron oxide, which we also call rust. So if you think of like rusty cars, or maybe in your garden you've got like a rusty old fork or a wheelbarrow or something that's been left outside for too long, that's basically the same thing that's happened on the surface of Mars, where the whole planet is just kind of rusty. So yeah, it gives it this orangish red look. Another fun fact about Mars is the highest mountain in the solar system is on Mars. It's called Olympus Mons, and it's about 22 kilometers tall. To put that into context, Everest is about 8,000 meters tall, so it's almost 3 times the height of Everest. So I'm just going around these circles, which are like craters, but also like this bit's like a mountain region. These bits are like craters. Mars has lots and lots of craters. Not as many as the moon, but it still has a lot. Okay, make my brush a bit smaller, just so I can carefully go around these craters. There we go. Right, I'm going to switch to a red now, I think. I'm going to come back and do these craters in a minute and do this next section. So Mars has 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, which I'm going to talk about a bit more in a bit. Obviously, it doesn't have as many moons as some planets, and it has more moons than others. Like, we only have 1 moon. Planets like Mercury and Venus don't have any moons at all. And Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune all have lots of moons. So yeah, it's a bit different. Right, I'm going to switch to a light blue, I think. Just to do down here, because this bit at the bottom is also ice. So on Mars, we've been looking for water a lot, and also just any signs of life. because if we can find water on Mars, then also there may have been life on Mars, or there may still exist life on Mars, but we just can't find it. So we found on the surface, at the poles, the North and the South Pole, we found ice. So I'm doing this like a nice ice blue. I'll switch to a light brown on the colour in these sections. Because Mars is further away from the sun than the Earth, it's too cold for liquid water to exist on the surface. It just turns to ice, as we see at the poles. But there is a rover is the wrong word. It's like a little box that kind of sits on the surface. It doesn't move. And basically it's using earthquakes and stuff on Mars to try and understand the surface underneath Mars. Now the problem is we don't know if Mars is geologically active or not, so if it has volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff. We don't think it does, but we don't know enough about it at the moment. So if there are earthquakes, great. So basically what happens is when there's earthquakes, they send shockwaves through the different layers of the planet, and depending on if it's liquid or rock or different types of rock, these shockwaves behave differently, and so they can start to understand the planet. So if Mars has earthquakes, great, we can use these waves to understand it. But what this rover's, well, I keep saying rover, it's not really a rover. What this device is actually trying to do is it's going to use some of these big meteor crashes into the planet and use the shockwaves from those. So it's very sensitive so that it can detect meteors from like all over the planet hitting into it and try and find out the like structure of Mars below the surface. Right, I'm going to switch to, I'll stick my light browns to Phobos. And the reason why it's important to understand what's below the surface of Mars is, although it's too cold on the surface for water, underneath the surface, where in like caves and stuff, it could be possible for water to exist down there. So potentially there could be life under the surface of Mars. So we need to understand what's underneath it. If we could find some like large caves or something, then yeah, who knows what's down there. So I'm just colouring in Phobos now as like light brown, and then it's got these darker regions I'm colouring the darker brown as well. And Phobos also has some craters. So Mars is quite easy to see in the night sky if you have, well, you don't need a telescope, you can see it with your eyes. It has like a reddish glow to it slightly. There we go, and the colour in these are dark brown as well. Sadly, the moons of Mars aren't quite as colourful as the moons of Jupiter. They're a bit brown, and that's about it. But if you have lots of shades of brown pencils, feel free to go nuts and do it lots of different colours of brown. I'm just going to stick with a light brown and a dark brown for now. So Deimos is kind of weird, as you might have noticed. It has this like triangle shape to it, like almost like a rounded triangle with like without corners. I tried to do research, so I didn't know until I was making this colouring sheet that Deimos was actually this shape. I thought the moons were round. But I tried to do some research to try and find out, and nobody seems to really know why Deimos is this triangle shape. So if you want to try and understand it, feel free to, you know, put some theories out there. I mean, it could be maybe this was like 3 giant asteroids that came together or something. That's just a guess. Like I say, no one really knows the answer right now. But your guess is as good as mine right now. Let's do brown again. That's all. Actually, no. I'm gonna do red. Let's do some red. Well, let's have some bright craters. They kind of look like spots. Well, it's fine. The other weird thing as well about Deimos is, so most moons, when they go around their planet, go around the middle. They kind of pass over the middle. Like our moon goes around the middle. if you think of it almost like a plane, where like all the moons, like Jupiter's moons, like all lie at different points out from the center. Deimos is weird because it's slightly off that. Instead of being flat, Deimos is slightly up at an angle. It's off by about 2 degrees, so it's like very, very small, but it's still slightly off. And no one really knows why. Deimos is a very mysterious moon. Right, let's do Curiosity Rover now. I'm going to switch to a grey. If you've got a silver, feel free to use that instead. Need a smaller brush. So Curiosity Rover has been on Mars since about 2013, I think. Since 2013 or 2012, I get confused with dates and years and stuff. And it's probably, I'd say, like the most popular one, or most recent one anyway. And Curiosity's aim is to try and understand like if Mars could have had life on it. So let's call that. Yeah, let's keep that silver. I was thinking maybe switch into a dark blue, but I think I'll keep it silver. So yeah, Curiosity aims to understand if there could have been life, and also liquid water at some point, because there's some theories that Mars had like rivers and oceans on it. Like if you look at the surface of Mars, even on like satellite pictures and stuff, like you see like riverbeds where it looks like water could have like flowed along it and stuff like that. So Curiosity is trying to understand this by looking at some of the rocks and stuff in detail. And we think we found evidence of it with some of the rocks looking like they've, had reactions. We're called like hydration, where it's kind of like reacted with the water a little bit. So there was a big thing in the news a few years ago where it was thought that Curiosity had found one of these, and as far as we know, it has. So they've kind of left it alone so they don't accidentally contaminate it, because for all we know there could be some bacteria on Curiosity that's been taken up from Earth, so they kind of left this spot alone where they found evidence of water. What colour should we do? I'm going to switch to dark blue. And the colour in its eye, a dark blue. Not very good at staying the lines, but it's fine. And let's also do the body a dark blue, I think. I'll brush a bit bigger. So the next big European rover to go to Mars is called ExoMars. It was supposed to be launched like around nowish, but it keeps being delayed for like different issues. So I'm at Lancaster University now, but my old university where I was did my degree, it's called Aberystwyth and it's in Wales, and there they actually worked on ExoMars while it's kind of being built. At the moment it's kind of finished-ish. They're just trying to figure out like launch it and get all the stuff ready for that. The thing my university did is they worked on the camera so that the robot could see, and then also they taught the robot how to walk. So the robot has wheels like Curiosity does, but the difference is because Mars is covered in sand, if the robot wants to go uphill, it will just wheel spin and won't be able to grip, and so it will just like slip back down. So what the university taught the robot how to do is it can lock its wheels and then lift them like legs and walk up a hill instead of just like struggling with its wheels, which I think is quite cool. And the other thing as well about that university is when they had to test out the camera, they had to test that the cameras were working properly on Mars. So they sent up a couple of basically test bits of the rover. So before they launched up the whole mission, they sent bits of it up just to kind of like check it out. And so the university's logo, which is what they use for testing out the camera on Mars, is the most photographed object ever on Mars, which I think is quite cool. Like I say, my university worked on just a few bits of that. There's like, this is a big collaboration across all of Europe. Like there's like lots and lots of different universities and teams working on this rover. Like those are just the bits that my university did. Cool. Right, what colour should I do the wheels? I think I'm going to do it yellow. Haven't used yellow yet. I feel like it doesn't actually have yellow wheels, but it probably has like quite a dark coloured wheels. But seeing as I'm about to colour in the whole background black, I feel like yellow would stand out a bit better. But yeah, ExoMars was in the news about a year ago, so about 2019, I think, because they were sending out one of the practice stages. They were like practicing doing the landing and stuff, and they lost it. So basically, when a satellite launches up and then takes a rover down onto the surface of Mars, I think it's 7 minutes they have. It's called the 7 minutes of hell. It might not be 7 minutes, I can't remember exactly how long it is off the top of my head. But basically what it is between the rover coming out of the satellite and going down to the planet, it takes about 7 minutes. But also, because of the distance Mars is from Earth, it takes about 7 minutes for the signals to get there and back. So the reason why it's called 7 minutes of hell is basically because during this time, when the rover is landing, the people controlling it have no control over it. Because anything happens, it's too late. The rover will have already hit the planet or landed safely. They can't actually tell. I missed a few spots. It's hard to see this yellow. Maybe yellow wheels weren't a good idea. Oh well. So basically what happened with ExoMars is when they were sending up this early stage, they launched it up and then they lost control of it and its camera cut out, and they know it hit the planet and it smashed, but they couldn't find where. They found it now, but it was basically like a 200-kilometer window where this satellite, I keep saying satellite, this rover could have smashed into the planet. So then they'd kind of search for it in this large area, because of the way the planet was rotating and like where the rover's trajectory was for where it could have landed, it could be anywhere in this giant region. And because they had no control and no connection to this robot, they couldn't find it. But yeah, they found it now. But yeah, that's why it's called the 7 minutes of hell. Right, I'm gonna colour in the title now. Let's go for a red. I think I'll do this red and orange for Mars. Make my brush a little bit bigger. So the moon, the moon and also the International Space Station also have a bit of a delay. It's not as much as Mars because obviously they're a bit closer. I don't know how much the delay is for the moon or the International Space Station. I think the International Space Station is like less than a minute. It's not much because it's pretty close. But obviously Mars is much, much further away. And the same as like if they want to like send like Voyager, which was in the 70s, which went out and studied a lot of the other planets in the solar system, or Voyager 2, which also did the same thing. I'll do every other letter red and every other letter orange, I think. When they're looking at these planets and stuff, so say they want to go around Jupiter, they have to plan these movements really far in advance because there is this time delay. And so the scientists who are working and the engineers who are working on them have to be so careful with how they do these maneuvers and like movements and stuff. There we go. Almost finished. And then just need to colour in the background and we're done. But yeah, I think Mars is the only planet that's entirely habited by robots. Well, as far as we know anyway. Okay, right. Let's colour in. So I'll switch to a black. Make my brush quite big. I'm just going to go up to the edge of these lines. Oh, I kind of cut across the planet there. Oh well, it's fine. It makes it look slightly less round. Around this title. So obviously the other thing that a lot of people talk about with Mars is how we want to send astronauts and stuff there one day. The problem is it takes, I can't remember if it's 6 months or 9 months. Yeah, it takes between about 6 months and 9 months. I can't remember exactly how long to get to Mars. So if we were to send astronauts and stuff to Mars, they would have to be able to, live in a space rocket for that long, which is a long time. When astronauts go to the International Space Station, I think there was the recently launched SpaceX rocket, and that they were in the rocket for about 24 hours, which is less than, normally it's a few days, but they've managed to get that time down much less. Right, I'm going to try and round this off a bit, because I've kind of messed that up a bit. Right, I'm going to go around the title so we can kind of see this thing of Mars, and the same for Phobos. I know Phobos and Deimos are kind of weird names, but they're named after the Roman gods. So Mars, as you may know, is the Roman god of war, and Phobos and Deimos were his minions. And actually, so most of the Roman gods, their names come from the Greek gods. So in Greek mythology, Mars was Ares, and his minions were Phobos and Deimos. But actually, if you've seen the Disney movie Hercules, you'll know that there's Hades is in it, and he has his two assistants, Pain and Panic. Panic's name actually comes from Phobos, which in kind of English, Phobos means fear, and they kind of like made that a bit nicer. I guess they probably wanted the alliteration of Pain and Panic, where they both start with P's. But yeah, so Phobos actually means fear, and that's where the name comes from. So although we think of these names as quite weird, they're actually in our culture more than we realise. I don't know what Deimos means. I know Deimos, especially like when you look at it, it's kind of hard to read if you don't know how it's pronounced. Right, so I'm going to colour in all this background black, and then I'm going to add in some stars and stuff. If there's any questions that I haven't answered that you have about Mars, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them. I am not a Mars expert, but I will see what I can find out for you. Normally I work with like stuff that's like kind of outside the solar system. My main PhD work is looking at supernova, which is exploding stars. But I've picked up a few things about the solar system along the way. Usually I do like trips into schools and stuff, and we teach kids about the solar system. Lancaster University has a planetarium, which is basically arrived about the same time I did at the university, and we go and we can show people like around the solar system and stuff, which is quite cool. Alright, almost finished. Make my brush a bit smaller again. So this bit here where I've done like an eye is a camera. And Curiosity is different from the other rovers that have been up to Mars before, and that this camera is on a big arm, and it can move the camera almost like a selfie stick. It can move it all the way around it, so it can see itself from lots of different angles. And this is because some of the other rovers have got stuck on rocks, like underneath it, like here, and they haven't been able to see to then get the rover clear of these rocks, and like how to get it out. So there's one, I can't remember what it's called, but there was a rover before Curiosity where exactly that happened. It got stuck on a rock and they couldn't move it, and then it's still there as far as I know. So they wanted Curiosity to be able to see from like all angles, so that if it does get stuck at any point, it can try and free itself. And also, you may have heard the thing about how Curiosity sings itself happy birthday every year. Basically what happened is Curiosity, the engineers who built it, managed to get the circuit board that controls the rover to vibrate to the tune of happy birthday for its first birthday. But it was just a one-time thing. Sadly, it's not been every year. Because they thought, it'd be a nice thing for the rover to do. But because it has like limited power and like life and stuff, it has like a time span of how long it's going to be working for. They don't want to waste any of that doing these silly things. Like again, like it's great that they do them, but also the science kind of has to come first. And I think especially because Curiosity has made some like big findings, like I say, like finding like evidence for life and sorry, not evidence for life, evidence for water on Mars. They kind of want to see how much more it can find. Okay, right. Done. Right, let's do some stars. Oh wow, my you can see how badly I stay inside the lines. Oh well. Okay, I'm gonna do some circles. Right, so I can do some nice little circles. Mine are kind of looking like smudges, but it'll be fine. I'm just trying to do them in like a random place so they don't look like grids of lines. Let's do a bigger one here. A couple of bigger ones. Put one in the middle of the A. But yeah, I know it's not perfect, but I think that'll do. So yeah, that's a colouring in video of Mars and its moons. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I say, there's the Jupiter one as well I've done, which if you go on the link to download the sheet for Mars, which is in the description, you'll find a sheet there for Jupiter and its full moons as well. And there's also a video on my channel of me colouring those in and basically doing the same as this and just talking about facts about Jupiter and its moons and stuff. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.